Home Depot is a $100 billion giant. Meanwhile, Menards isn't. They don't even cover the entire United States. And yet, something very strange is happening. On social media, in comment sections, in conversations among home improvement folks, people defend Menards as if it were their own family store. And do you know why? Not because Menards is the cheapest, but because Home Depot is making customers feel more like suspects than paying shoppers. Products are locked up, staff seems thinner, checkout lines move slowly, and the pricing is hard to explain. Meanwhile, Menards quietly does one very old-fashioned thing. It sells in a way that doesn't make customers question their own buying decisions. This isn't a story about prices. It's a story about trust. And when trust begins to crack, an empire can fall, one aisle at a time. Why is this story dangerous for Home Depot? If you look at the numbers on paper, this story shouldn't even be possible. Home Depot is a massive empire, worth around $300 billion, a number so large that if you converted it into cash, you could stack it into a green wall longer than interstate highways stretching across state lines. Lowe's is no small player either, at about $130 billion, enough to buy up hundreds of other retail companies and still have money left over. And then there's Menards, a regional chain, not nationwide, not loud in the media, not burning billions on advertising. But what's hard to explain is this. Menards is still drawing customers in like a quiet tide, while Home Depot is losing them in ways that can't be explained by inflation or a cooling housing market alone. Menards currently has about 341 stores. It may sound small, but imagine each store like a massive warehouse the size of several football fields, packed with building materials, equipment, appliances, like a Costco version made specifically for home improvement folks. But the most unsettling part isn't the size. The unsettling part is this. When you read comments online, you'll see that people don't just like Menards, they defend Menards. And that's a red flag in retail. Because when customers start having emotions about a brand, they're no longer buying with logic, they're buying with trust. So the real question is, what did Menards do to make customers feel that Home Depot isn't as trustworthy as it once was? And if a regional chain can shake a giant, could this be a sign that Home Depot has an invisible crack in its business model? Do you think the reason lies in pricing, or in something deeper? And to understand why Menards wins, we have to look at the weapon that makes customers reach for their wallets without hesitation. The 11% rebate and the pricing psychology game that Home Depot can't replicate. If Home Depot is like a McDonald's-style empire present on every corner, lights on in sync, the same formula copied like a photocopy, then Menards is playing a completely different hand. And that difference is exactly what makes this story concerning. Menards isn't trying to plant its flag across the entire United States. They're not chasing the dream of opening thousands of nationwide stores just to showcase scale. Instead, they chose to drive their stake deep into one single region, the Midwest. On the surface, that may look like a limitation, but in reality, it's an extremely smart strategy. Because when you concentrate in one region, you don't have to build a bulky operating network stretched out like a spider web. You optimize warehousing, optimize transportation, optimize inventory, like an army that only fights on home ground, familiar with the terrain, the weather, every small road. And what's the result? As of late 2025, Menards has around 341 stores. It sounds small compared to the giants, but each store feels like a massive warehouse ranging from about 150,000 to over 200,000 square feet. Nearly several football fields packed under one roof. Walking in, you don't feel like you're just shopping. It feels more like stepping into a builder's cave, where everything is there, everything is ready, and you don't have to run across 3 different stores to find one small part. But what stands out even more is this. Menards doesn't just sell products, they sell peace of mind. When a chain is densely focused in one region, it understands local demand like the back of its hand. Which season people repair roofs, which season they build decks, which season Midwest households rush to buy heaters. That's something a nationwide chain struggles to replicate. Because the larger it expands, the more mechanical it becomes, more like a revenue machine than a store serving a community. And now the question becomes interesting. Home Depot is trying to satisfy the entire country, while Menards only needs to satisfy the Midwest, and that alone seems enough to pull customers away in large numbers. From your point of view, is this strategy of not expanding true wisdom, or a ticking time bomb if Menards grows more ambitious? And to understand why customers walk into Menards and reach for their wallets faster, we have to talk about the weapon that keeps them coming back: the 11% rebate, a psychological pricing game that Home Depot can hardly replicate. If you think this battle is just about who sells for less, then you're looking in the wrong direction. Because in retail, especially home improvement, retail price isn't just a number. Price is a feeling. It's a mood. It's the thing that makes you walk out of a store with a smile or with suspicion, like your wallet was tapped and you didn't even realize it. This is a truth Home Depot understands very well, but seems to be losing day by day. Customers don't remember exactly how much they paid for a box of screws, but they clearly remember the feeling of looking at a price tag and thinking, "Wait, why is that so expensive?" And even worse, they remember the feeling of being slowed down, being monitored, being treated as if they came there to cause trouble instead of to shop. Think about it. You just want to buy one small item, but it's locked inside a plastic case. You have to find an employee. The employee is busy. You stand there waiting. You look around. You start to feel irritated. And then a very dangerous thought appears for any brand. I'm not being respected. This isn't a story about product security. It's a story about trust. Home Depot and Lowe's are starting to feel more like massive machines powered by procedures, where everything looks smooth on financial reports, but feels rough in real life. Fewer checkout counters. Fewer staff members. Items that once sat openly on shelves now require someone to unlock them. All of it adds up to an invisible bill that customers pay with their time and patience. And in a shopper's mind, time is money. If you spend an extra 10 minutes just to get a $15 item, it feels no different than paying an unspoken inconvenience fee. Meanwhile, Menards doesn't necessarily sell at the lowest prices, but they do something more subtle. They make customers feel like they're paying the right price. You walk into Menards, you see the Save Big Money flyer, you see the 11% rebate signs, you see prices that look reasonable, and your brain immediately reaches one conclusion: at least I'm not being played here. That's the art of it. Menards sells fairness, not cheapness. Fairness means you don't hesitate. Fairness means you don't doubt yourself. Fairness means you can buy a box of screws, a sheet of lumber, or a drill without leaving the store feeling like something wasn't quite right. And this is what should concern Home Depot. When a brand starts to be associated with the feeling that it's no longer as trustworthy as before, it doesn't lose customers in one sudden blow. It loses them through slow leakage, little by little, like a cracked pipe inside a wall. By the time you notice, the whole house is damaged. So the question is, how did Menards create that sense of fairness? And why can't Home Depot, with its enormous resources, replicate it? The answer lies in the weapon that keeps customers coming back out of habit. The 11% rebate, not a discount, but an extremely powerful psychological game. If you ask a retail expert, what's Menards' secret, they won't talk about store size, product count, or even pricing. They'll talk about something that sounds incredibly simple, yet functions like a psychological switch: the 11% rebate. On paper, a rebate is just cash back, an old-school type of promotion, even a bit outdated in the era of discount apps and online shopping. But Menards doesn't use rebates as just a marketing program. They use them like a ritual. The process feels like a game. You buy something. You submit the rebate receipt. A few weeks later, you receive an 11% credit check. And most importantly, it can only be spent at Menards. That's no longer just a discount. That's an invisible string pulling customers back. Because in the buyer's mind, the 11% rebate isn't about saving money, it's about the feeling of having won. It's like walking out of a casino not with a bag of cash, but with a ticket that guarantees your next visit gives you another chance to win. A kind of legal, reasonable dopamine, packaged as smart family savings. And here's the extremely subtle part. 11% sounds small, but when you translate it into real life, it becomes something hard to ignore. A small home project costing around $1,000, that's $110 coming back. A larger project around $5,000, that's $550 returned. For middle-aged Americans, that's not pocket change. That's gas money, grocery money, a contribution to a school fund. Meanwhile, Home Depot discounts in a very industrial way. Bright red sale signs, a few dollar coupons, or cold reward programs. It feels like a calculator saying, "I've deducted $5. Thank you for your purchase." Menards feels more like a friend winking and saying, "Hey, you just made money. Come back and use it." And just like that, Menards doesn't just sell products, they create a psychological loop. Buy, wait, receive, return, buy again. A loop that, the deeper customers go, the more they feel like the smart one, the one who knows where to shop. The uncomfortable question for Home Depot is this: how do you defeat a competitor that doesn't sell for less, but sells the feeling of winning? And why does a program that seems outdated become the very thing that builds loyalty among millions? But the rebate is only the bait. What keeps the fish hooked comes next. Private labels, in-house brands that allow Menards to control pricing and margins in ways customers barely notice. Do you think the 11% rebate is smart? Or is it a trap that encourages customers to spend more? If the 11% rebate is the bait that brings customers back, then private label is what keeps Menards thriving like a seasoned player in retail. And this is the part where Home Depot can only grit its teeth. Because Menards doesn't just sell products, they sell through a two-layer mask system. In front is the feeling of low prices. Behind it is a highly sophisticated profit control machine. Inside Menards, you'll see a series of brands that sound premium but are actually their own private labels. Masterforce, Montiello, Benchmark. Names designed to sound established, professional, like something a middle-aged American dad would confidently buy to fix the garage without even checking reviews. And here's the key point. When customers see Masterforce, they don't directly compare it to DeWalt or Milwaukee. They simply see an option that looks reasonable, costs less, has solid packaging, and most importantly, doesn't feel like they're paying extra just for a big national brand name. Menards uses private label the way a casino uses lighting. Not to empty your wallet, but to make you forget you're spending more than you planned. Strategically, private label is pure gold. It allows Menards to control pricing directly, without depending entirely on major suppliers. Maintain stable margins, even when input costs fluctuate. And, especially, increase profit without raising prices in an obvious way. Home Depot is different. When they raise the price on a nationally branded item, customers see it immediately, compare it immediately, and the feeling of overpaying shows up instantly. It's like pulling into a gas station and seeing prices jump 30 cents, no explanation needed. You just feel it in your wallet. Menards, on the other hand, simply shifts customers toward a lower-priced private label product. Customers feel like they're saving money, while in reality, Menards still protects its margins, sometimes even better than before. That's the difference between directly raising prices and guiding choice. One approach frustrates customers. The other makes them feel smart. And if you think this is just marketing, it's not. This is a power play. Private label allows Menards to move beyond being just a retailer and become the one holding the strings of the game. So the question is, if Menards can keep prices comfortable while maintaining strong profits, why can't Home Depot do the same? Or is Home Depot stuck in a system that's simply too large to pivot? But private label still isn't the final move. The real blow is something no brand name can fix. The shopping experience and the time customers feel is wasted. And that's where we move to the next secret. Menards wins with something no one expects: time. If you were the customer, would you choose a national brand or a lower-priced private label if it truly felt worth the money? In the retail world, everyone talks about price, everyone brags about promotions, everyone chases technology. But Menards wins with something giant corporations often overlook the most: the customer's time. There's an internal rule at Menards that sounds so simple you'd think it's obvious. But in big box retail, it's almost rare. If there are more than 2 people waiting at checkout, they open another register immediately, not just on holidays, Not just during peak hours, not only when customers complain, but the moment the system detects a line forming. And this is exactly what Home Depot doesn't want to admit. Sometimes customers don't walk away because prices are high, but because they feel stuck in an endless line, like standing at the DMV on a Monday morning. Picture this: a middle-aged American man who just worked 9 hours and only has the weekend to fix the fence behind his house. He's not going to the store to browse. He walks in with a clear list: buy nails, buy lumber, buy paint, then head home and finish the job before dark. If he spends 15 minutes just waiting to check out, that's no longer an inconvenience. It feels like a lack of respect. Menards understands something Home Depot and Lowe's seem to have forgotten. Customers don't just pay with their wallets, they pay with their patience, and patience is becoming more scarce than ever, especially in a time when people are counting every dollar, every hour, every day off. What's interesting is that Menards doesn't advertise this strategy. They don't hang banners saying, "We respect your time." They simply execute it quietly. And customers tell that story to each other like a word-of-mouth secret. So the question becomes, why does Home Depot, with its enormous resources, allow customers to stand in line as if their time isn't valuable? Is it because they're cutting costs, or because they've become too large a machine to change? And right here, the story moves to a deeper level. Menards doesn't just win on experience, they win because they understand the Midwest in a way that Home Depot seems to understand only through financial reports. At this point, the picture starts to reveal a very sharp dividing line. Not a line about pricing, not about scale, but a line about who each brand is truly serving. Menards was built like a hometown institution, a store that doesn't just sell building materials, but blends into local life. In the Midwest, Menards sponsors racing events, supports community activities, and shows up in the kinds of gatherings people consider part of the neighborhood. It feels like a store you don't even have to decide to trust, because it was already there long before you needed to. Menards' image of family values isn't just a slogan on the wall. It shows in how they speak to customers, how they keep prices steady, how they accept slower profit growth to preserve a long-term experience. Menards doesn't need to become the Amazon of home improvement. They just need to be the store for working people, the ones who fix their own roofs, build their own fences, and take care of their own homes. Meanwhile, Home Depot operates in a very different world, a world where every quarter comes with an earnings report. Every number is examined under a microscope. Every decision has to answer one question: are margins improving? When you serve Wall Street, you start optimizing the things customers don't see. Reducing headcount, standardizing experiences, trimming labor costs minute by minute. On a spreadsheet, it all makes sense, but in real life, it creates gaps that are hard to measure: slower checkout lines, fewer employees, and an experience that feels increasingly impersonal. This difference leads to a dangerous paradox. Home Depot may still sell enormous volumes, but Menards is more loved. And in retail, being loved is an advantage money can't buy. So the question for you is this: if you had to choose between a store optimized for shareholders and a store optimized for the weekend shopper, which one would you pick? But that emotional connection also places Menards in a risky position. Because when a brand is loved deeply, any misstep in expansion can break that trust. And that's where the story moves into its next chapter: how success can become a double-edged sword. At this point in the story, Menards looks like the winner: loyal customers, strong reputation, a larger competitor trying to recalibrate. But in retail history, this is also the most dangerous moment, the moment a brand begins to believe it has found an unbeatable formula. Because what makes Menards successful today could be the very thing that brings them down tomorrow. The first risk lies in the temptation to expand. When you're thriving in the Midwest, a question almost certainly comes up in the boardroom: why not take this model nationwide? It sounds reasonable, but it's also the same path many retail chains have stepped onto and never fully returned from, with their original identity intact. If expansion moves too quickly, Menards could fall into what some call the Walmart effect. Stores are still large, inventory is still abundant, but the local character fades. Employee training thins out, and service becomes mechanical. A store once loved as our place can quickly turn into an anonymous concrete box, indistinguishable from hundreds of others on the map. The second risk comes from a front that can't be ignored: e-commerce. Consumers are increasingly shopping online, even for home improvement products. That pressures Menards to invest heavily in logistics, warehousing, and delivery areas that haven't traditionally been their core strength. And in a world where global supply chains continue to shift, a single miscalculation could gradually erode the pricing advantage they worked so carefully to build. But the biggest risk isn't external, it's internal. Menards is winning because it's different. If one day they begin optimizing like Home Depot, speaking like Home Depot, operating like Home Depot, then the question won't be, can Menards get bigger? It will be, is Menards still Menards? History suggests that many empires don't fade because they were defeated from the outside, but because they slowly wore themselves down, decision after decision, until no one realized what had been lost. And right here, the story reaches its final turning point: why Menards is winning today, but may not win forever, and what lessons Home Depot and the entire retail industry may eventually have to confront. And that's what makes the Menards story so noteworthy. They aren't pulling customers away from Home Depot with loud tactics, but with things that feel almost old-fashioned: prices that feel fair, a comfortable experience, and respect for the customer's time. But the big question remains: can Menards preserve this identity as they grow larger? Or will they one day follow the same path as other giants that were once widely admired? What about you? Have you shopped at Menards or Home Depot? Which one feels more worth the money to you? Leave a comment below. I'd genuinely like to hear your real experience. If you enjoy this kind of behind-the-scenes retail analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. There are many shifts happening in American retail that might surprise you. This video is for analysis, commentary, and the compilation of publicly available information for educational and entertainment purposes only. The content does not represent any company and is not financial or investment advice. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video.